Kate Falcho. Welcome back to Irish Granny Tarot. This is video number 3 of our book, Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. And we're just going to move forward. If you've missed videos 1 and 2, check them out. So we're on chapter 11, The Advanced Soul. They are scarce. They have far-reaching spiritual consciousness. They usually don't need a therapist, so he doesn't see too many of them. They're usually here as incarnated guides. They're usually people who have mastered the souls, who have mastered the fundamental issues and are here to fine-tune things. They're often quiet and unassuming. They get fulfillment from improving the lives of others. They focus on individual human values. They are practical. Often they work in cultural mainstream jobs to influence people and events in a positive direction. They often are beings who are emotionally moved, appreciating beauty. They have psychic abilities, and those things don't necessarily denote advanced souls. So don't assume. They have patience with society. They show extraordinary coping skills and have exceptional insight. They're often in helping professions or combating social injustice. They show composure, kindness, understanding towards others. They're not motivated by self-interest. They disregard their own needs, and they live in reduced circumstances. They're usually Democrats. No. For example, a woman in her mid-30s who works in a chemical abuse treatment center, and she seemed able to see into the soul and to calm people in chaos. He had lunch with her, and she was interested in regression, but not in her past lives. In her trance, she had a very long number of incarnations, beginning 130,000 years ago, before the last ice age. She could describe physical changes as time went on. No souls, not very many, before 200,000 years ago, there weren't enough physical bodies. But eventually, the brain was enough for spiritual consciousness and communication. And we could see this in burial rituals and art from the past. Souls made us human. I don't know, there's a lot of debate about this. There's a lot of debate about how many times we have risen and fallen as far as become more sophisticated and then wrecked it. There have been cycles. I swear to God, I didn't see this. There have been cycles of cataclysms that have wiped out various types of humanoids with souls. And souls have seeded the earth in different cycles, he's told. And she has a guide who was a past life friend who is still with her as a guide. Case 23. This is this woman. She says, I'm a glowing fragment of light. Kind of sky blue. The intensity of mental power increases with the darker phases of the light. Our light is attached to source. The word God is misused. Too much personalization. We make it too human. Spirits may show black cavities for eyes, like, the old traditional ghost with the black eye, only because there's more concentrated thought there. The energy mass is not uniform. Advanced souls evaluate life's mistakes without help. Sages are the watchers of the earth. They are advanced souls who keep returning to help. They live simple lives in small communities or alone. And some will wander. They're known as oracles in earlier times. They aren't leaders because they prefer to be ordinary people who are affected by movers and shakers, because Grassroots, right? They have great power of understanding. They give wise advice. They live simply. They are saints. There are even more advanced entities that exist that are called the old ones, and they have concentrated power of enlightenment, and they are the purest elements of thought. They're close to source. She speaks of her company of 9 such watchers, and they rest on different levels. Each soul advances driven by character and integrity, including the drive to excel. Different incarnations expand our nature. Fulfillment is integration with others. Ethical conduct. Souls can do more than one thing at a time, but it doesn't really divide. It sort of separates a bit and comes back together. And it doesn't affect the quality of the teaching. Souls don't rest. Spirit world is the center for evaluation and analysis. Now, you might have to heal in the spirit world. That's not what she means by they don't rest. It means they don't take vacation, you know. So incarnate souls sense the presence of a guide more or less depending on the soul. So you may know your guides. You may be able to meet your guides. Somebody's driving a stupid loud truck, sorry. So you can't be too involved. Guides can't be too involved with souls because it interferes with our free will. So he asks, how do guides contact incarnate souls? And she says, I can't tell you. And so the author asks to speak to her, the subject's guides, and repeats the question, how does someone get a guide's attention? And he's told, have a calm mind, focus your attention away from your surroundings, reach to your inner voice, expand your inner consciousness, and engage the guide in a central thought. You must reach beyond your specific problem to be receptive. It can be hard for people on the earth to get the signals that they need to override human emotion. You can pick out specific souls because individuals have individual vibration, energy patterns. Guides can whisper in your ear. They're not encumbered by immediacy of human emotion. You know, oh, please let me pass this test. We watch. She says that they watch, they recognize turbulence of thought, and they reach out to the mind, and they reach out and touch the mind. Thought is usually a smooth slipstream, and when it's troubled, it's turbulent. So she says guides wait for the best receptivity to enter the subject subtly. The challenge for the watcher is to know when and how to communicate. The soul may not be in the proper mode for reflection. You can rush in too fast to help people. People in intense grief, their energy is scattered and the guide is shut out. She says we don't intrude. It's a soft coupling. We implant ideas. People think it's an inspiration of their own. The biggest problem for guides is people's fear. She discusses the creation training that starts with microorganisms. I don't know, I didn't write a lot about this. It's in the book, but that didn't fascinate me as much. Manifesting microorganisms somehow didn't interest me as much as interacting with people. So that's my particular soul problem. So she learned to produce new chemical compounds by mixing basic molecules with their energy. This helps it helps by examining new structures and mutations to see what works. A planet hospitable for life has souls watching and helping out with the natural processes. They can create miniature suns and planets. She's learning how to do that. You must learn to work together to combine energy for the best and the biggest results. The author has no contact with high enough souls to learn about larger creation and the source. It's a combination of creators, old ones, who use energy to spawn universes. It's equal to the Jains, the Jainist belief that there is no single Godhead. They believe Siddha, a fully projected soul, creates a group of universal creators, and they're fully liberated from further transmigration of the soul. Reality is uncreated and eternal. Therefore, Siddhas need no creator. Most Eastern philosophy says no, there is a divine board of directors created by a chairman. So I don't know. People don't know. We don't know. Older souls can remember life as non-humans on other worlds, and there are many schoolyards, lives that are intelligent on other worlds, and many schoolyards. He asks, what do you think of the Earth School? By comparison, the Earth School is insecure still. It is filled with resentment of many people over being led and antagonism of the leaders towards each other. There is so much fear to overcome here. It's a world in conflict because there's too much diversity among too many people. Other worlds have low populations with more harmony. Earth's population has outpaced its mental development. Now, this is not saying that diversity is not a good thing. What it's saying is that we have overpopulated our planet so much that it's created an enormous problem for us. And this is not a criticism of diversity training. There's a subtle difference there. So the subject describes life on another planet with a dying sun, and she was actually a small flying creature, a very young soul, and she met a man at a party. And in this party, they found out they were actually from the same world. So she was confused. She felt she knew him, but how did she know him? The author had two subjects who came together, and they came to his office together. And in trance, they saw that they'd been soulmates over many lives. So he put them in trance separately. They didn't hear each other's sessions, but they said the same thing. So they even remembered living as aquatic creatures in a watery world that wasn't the earth. Soul incarnations don't need earth-like conditions. Once in human form, a soul won't reincarnate down the evolutionary chain. You won't come back as a dog or an ant or something. The ultimate objective, because they have simpler souls, simpler energy, lower vibration. And you're always supposed to be learning. The ultimate objective of souls is to seek unification with the supreme source of creative energy. It's called an act of conjunction. That means to join together. The source is the spirit world. It's the ultimate selfless being we strive to be. Souls enter various rooms of different physical realities from spiritual doorways, and the reality is timelessness. So this is all kind of metaphoric. In trance, the subject sees all now of time as the past, present, and future together. Time is unified in the spirit world. The illusion of time progression is created and sustained for souls coming to or from a physical dimension to be able to gauge their advancement. Really, it's irrelevant passage of time. They're just trying to judge, I started out here and now I've learned this. Time is merely an expression of change. And then I wrote the theory of quantum physics. Light and motion are a union of time and space arriving back on itself, curving back on itself. Space-time concepts are physical space is being warped into loops, creating mouths of hyperspace and black holes. This is astrophysics and metaphysics meeting. I have no idea what I just read out loud. The spirit world is not a void. It's a variety of descriptions. And there's a bunch of them. I wrote down, read the book. There's just too much. The spirits of other worlds seem not limited by dimensional constraints of our galaxy or universe. There are multiple dimensional realities. Souls can sense movement inward to source toward cohesion and uniting. Source pulsates. There is an explosive release and a return. So you're pushed out, you develop, you make your way back, you join again. When I was thrust outward, I was a child. Now I am being drawn back as my adolescence fades. Souls are part of massive electrical explosions, like a halo of dark purple that flares out to white and then returns. We begin awareness at the white edge, and as we grow, we become engulfed by darker light. And in it is warmth and knowing. Source gives life to let us reach a state of perfection. We come to earth to be magnified. It's not a fall. Source creates imperfect life forms and watches them achieve perfection as the ultimate expression of itself. The Sufis believe the Creator represents absolute good and absolute beauty, and the nature of beauty is to desire manifestation. Chapter 12, Life Selection. So souls decide to incarnate, and it's a tough decision. They have misgivings. Earth is a place of uncertainty and fear and aggression. In the spirit world, cooperation and never-ending support are what you experience. It's hard to leave, even temporarily. Rejuvenation and assessment takes as long as it takes. Individuals go through whatever they need to go through, but eventually the soul starts the process of reincarnation. Many remember some features of life on Earth with fondness or nostalgia, and they feel the pull of the physical expression of Earth. Training sessions prepare us. Our karma is evaluated for the best course of a new future. You answer the question, am I ready? What lessons do I want? What life will give the best opportunities for these lessons? Incarnation is regulated by the needs of souls and not by the urgency of host bodies. If one world dies, the souls just move on to another, which is why people ask me all the time, are we going to be okay? Well, yeah, because you're not your body. And that's hard for everyone to, it's hard for me. It's hard for everybody to accept. But that's the truth. We are not our body. We are using our body. And if our body is destroyed and our planet is destroyed, our souls, who we really are, will go elsewhere to learn lessons and evolve. So, yeah, we're fine. Are you going to live forever on Earth? No. Is the Earth going to be here forever? No. Do you know how you're going to check out? No, nobody can tell you that. Nobody can falsely reassure you of anything. You could get hit by a truck this afternoon. I'm not going outside. But the point is, yes, we will be fine because we are not our bodies. And this is all an illusion for lessons. And that's really hard because we're so mired in ego. It's a very hard thing to accept. So some souls continue to incarnate, and they trend toward more frequent incarnations because of the growing population. Today, more than one life per century is common. It used to be you wouldn't reincarnate for a really long time, but now there's so many extra bodies. So the doctor asks about the high demand on the inventory of souls, and will there be enough for the increasing population? And he's told, why don't you just worry about the increasing population killing the planet? Yikes. So and this is 1994, keep in mind that souls in untold numbers of places are in untold numbers of places besides the Earth. Some souls want to increase their development and they want to incarnate frequently. Other souls are reluctant to leave the spirit world. So case 24, a lower level soul. So this soul says, I'm nudged by my instructor. Isn't it about time to reincarnate? And the doctor asks, will you always return to Earth to grow? And the answer is, there will be another world besides Earth with Earth people. Earth will have fewer people. It'll be less crowded. I get the impression there is a colonization elsewhere. Some souls in trance can do post-like progression. I think it's past-like progression. So he puts them in a trance and they don't go backwards, they go forwards. Some say Earth population is greatly reduced by the end of the 22nd century because of soil and atmospheric changes, and people are living in odd domed buildings. The soul says we are pushed to go out of the spirit world, to reincarnate, so we don't get in a rut. It's gentle encouragement. Nobody is forced. The soul mentions that his friend who did not want to reincarnate, he felt he had nothing to contribute, and it was eventually shown he did benefit others on Earth. He just needed confidence. Souls with too much negative energy can be remodeled, and damaged souls can be restored. You could stay in the spirit and never be reborn, but that makes evolution much longer without direct experience, and you miss a great deal. Some souls impulsively return quickly, and this wears off. They realize they need time for rest and reflection. When you're ready to reincarnate, a soul goes to a place of life selection. First you pick when and where, and then you pick who. And you figure out where we would best fit. So then we put attention on the people that are there. And then souls are very influenced by the culture and events as well as by the people. So how the actual areas of the spirit world are seen by the souls is designed to contribute to its function for each soul. Arrival areas will be reassuring, and departure areas large, vibrant, and exciting. The place of life selection almost always is described as a movie theater where souls can see themselves in different roles. Not everything, but just enough to get a feeling for it. And then the soul picks the scenario that seems the most appealing. Case 25, a male subject. With a trainer, he chooses a lifetime, and the trainer and coordinator help the soul preview the life in the Ring of Destiny is what it's called. It's like a panorama movie theater. The soul is in the middle and watches life all around. The soul can operate the panels mentally, can change the images, and an actual life is being observed. It can zoom in on moments of decision in the life that determine the direction of the life. At any point, you can experience what that life is at that moment. And you can divide your energy and control the panels and be in them too. To spirits, time is uniform, but they can use it subjectively. I'm going to pretend like I understand this. Life is conditional. Progressive time is created to test us. There are many possible endings we don't see. It's obscured from us. Time is a catalyst for learning, but the soul can't see everything that will happen, and this tests the soul's ability to find solutions. There is destiny. Life cycles are in place, but many destinies that are unclear. Alternatives that are unclear. The spirit world protects souls from the knowledge that would interfere with free will and growth. The soul can identify its own past lives, but amnesia protects us in our current life, and to avoid inhibiting self-discovery. If we remembered everything, it would be like having the answer key to a test. The same is true to the future. Life does have a plan, a general blueprint, and this Ring of Destiny, in this Ring of Destiny, souls can experience alternative routes, but not all is preordained. We will face many opportunities for changes, which involve risk. The purpose of reincarnation is the exercise of free will. We have karmic lessons and responsibilities. It's the law of cause and effect. But there's a general blueprint. There's a general, well, you'll be this gender, you'll live in this time period, you'll live in this city. These will be your parents because genetically or whatever, culturally, socially, they have the best opportunity to offer you for the lessons you need to learn. And all these things potentially can happen to you depending on what choices you make. And that's the point. So we are the masters of our destiny. The subject describes having choices of certain cities to come to and can actually connect with the minds of the people to get a feeling for what life will be like there. So in this ring of destiny, they can briefly experience what it would be like to be a particular person in that person's life, even though the person's not yet born. So he looks at 1956, but he goes into his teens at that time and wants to check them and their abilities and their parents and their location. So before this ring, now this is the person in trance talking about what his particular experience was. Before this ring of destiny, he had the idea of when and where and what he'd like to be and do. And in the ring, he solidifies those choices and then zeroes in on specific people. More souls today are choosing to come back to places they've been before. This has more to do with an affinity for the environment and not for cultural or racial things. Many people prefer the sea, or they prefer the mountains, or they prefer urban life or rural life. Some cultures believe that souls stay with particular bloodlines. And the quote from the book is, "I am my own grandpa." The author rarely sees this. He says it would inhibit your growth. Some rare times a death will interfere with the bond, and that soul will return quickly to be with his soulmate. Often this happens with the death of a young child. So what happens is, the young child will die, and then the next year the parents have a new baby. Well, that's why. You may have a short filler life as a lesson for others. So you may be a baby who dies of SIDS, and there's some heavy lesson there for the people around you, and you kind of offer to do that, and you're there for, a few weeks. Souls often volunteer for certain deaths, and that death has a motive. There's a reason for this scenario. Chapter 13, Choosing a New Body. Souls have more than one choice, for who they're going to reincarnate. So how do we decide? Well, first we deliberate about cultural settings, time periods, the usefulness of a body's life in working on the soul's lessons, the lesson plans. The soul creates a blueprint, and it may choose an easier or harder next life. Because we're humans, we might make mistakes in our choices. We may need to make mid-course corrections during our life. Physical factors souls consider. The soul knows in advance what its body will look like, yet 90% of us profess dissatisfaction. And he says this is conscious amnesia. This is unhappiness is because social stereotyping affects our perceptions. And it's also a part of the plan to experience that dissatisfaction. Often people blame their body for holding them back. Well, I could have been like a supermodel if I were a foot and a half taller and 100 pounds thinner. That kind of attitude. He's found that handicaps, illnesses, and accidents have a purpose, and they fall under free will choices. We choose our body and our life for a reason. There's a reason that one of my big lessons is learning how to look at problems in life, not as problems, but as challenges and opportunities to learn. That's very hard. Many people assume that this is a punishment for past karma. Oh, you're, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. What would be, you're paralyzed now because you did something terrible to somebody in a past life, and now you have to experience it, and that's not it. just provides a lesson of choice to the soul and or for those around the soul. You may have volunteered to be that dependent person for the benefit of the caregivers. You just don't know. Often a path to quick growth is from hardships, but understanding this must come from self-knowledge. So these lives can involve a heavy social burden, and the ordeal is actually an opportunity to learn and be stronger. That's what they say. Your body is an important part of the trial you have set for yourself in this life, and sometimes it's all about the physical body. Case 26, a woman who complained of pain in her thigh bones. No medical findings. And he thought, I wonder, is this a past life trauma? So she went back in time, and in one life had been a Viking raider, very strong, never sick. Her soul missed out from not having those challenges. She had chosen to be this Viking because of the strength, because of the freedom. In another life, she was a young girl whose legs were broken by a carriage, and the Viking strength helped her to deal with it. The result of the injury was to become a great teacher and a great thinker. So he gave her suggestions to override the pain, which was left over from the carriage accident, and the pain left. So the laws of karma prevail. A life of one extreme will eventually be balanced by a life of another extreme. The Hindus believe in a rich man must become a beggar to develop his soul. Different challenges strengthen our souls, and how we stand up to failure and duress marks our progress. A very important lesson we all need to know is to let go of the past. Psychological factors that are considered this is the most vital part, by the way. Heredity and environment affect how the body functions. Spiritual energy fluctuates and affects temperament, and it's governed by genetics and environment. So you must decide the desired human behavior tendencies that you need to learn your lessons. Case 27, Texas businessman. He owned a big clothing firm, and he came in for a session. He was nervous about what would be uncovered. He'd had 2 failed marriages, was a binge alcoholic, had fired many employees, and had a high number of personnel complaints against him. He'd been abandoned. This is really sad. He'd been abandoned at 1 week old on the steps of a church. Spent the first few years of his life in an orphanage. Was adopted by an older couple who were strict disciplinarians and very disapproving of him. And he left home as a teenager. He had many scrapes with the law, and he actually attempted suicide. He seemed overly assertive, untrusting of authority, angry because of the abandonment and isolation. In this case, the doctor is saying this just shows you the long-term ramifications of childhood trauma. Case 27 goes back today, and he's left. This is when they go into a trance. He's left in a basket on the steps. His mom was young and unmarried. His dad was already married. And the mother was young and crying and tells him, I haven't any money and my parents won't help, and I'll always love you and hold you in my heart. And she knocks on the door of the church and leaves. He remembers a hard childhood with judging and controlling parents. He realizes he had life in the past with his mother's soul before, where he was a high priest in the desert close to the Red Sea about 2000 BC. And he's using the distribution of food to control people. His mother is the soul of a woman, his mother again, who stole food for others because she felt compassion for the hungry. She challenged his authority, and he had her executed to maintain power. So then it takes him to the spirit world when he was choosing this life. Why did he choose it? He negotiated the role of his life around still being with soul friends, and realizes the soul of his earlier mother would be the mother who leaves him on the steps of the church to balance the karma. He needed to learn what deliberately severing a family relationship felt like. The author remarks that we're able to be critical of ourselves and assist clients to reach inner selves it's the most important part of his job. He says the author says that the hard tasks we set for ourselves often begin in childhood. Family selection is important. We did have a choice of who our families are. He says if you had not been exposed to this person as a child, what would you now lack in understanding generally? There are spiritual reasons for being raised around certain kinds of people. To know ourselves eventually means to know ourselves spiritually means to understand why life happened with this family, this spouse, these friends. The karmic purpose for positive and negative relationships is what we should be asking ourselves. We also play a part in the drama of other people's lives. It's not all about us. Sometimes we serve a purpose for other people. There's a distinction between soul identity and human ego. The jealous ego means that there's a jealous soul behind it. Try to match character flaws with human temperament for growth, and we don't change who we are, we change how we choose to react. The Buddhists say that enlightenment is seeing the absolute soul and ego reflected in human ego. The ego is reflected in human ego, and then we have to act through it in life, during life. Seeing the absolute soul, ego, reflected in the relative human ego. Okay. And then act through it during life. Disassociation may be due to a soul that's unable to regulate and unify the human mind. Can become contaminated. The soul can be subverted. The author believes that the soul provides ideas, imagination, insight, and abstract thought, and it provides humans qualitative reality. A mature soul doesn't necessarily have a high IQ. Well, that's reassuring. It can be smart and closed-minded, which makes you could be really smart and be closed-minded, and that makes you an immature soul. So our markers that we judge people by are not exactly spiritual. The evenness of mood, interest, and abilities focused on helping others shows an advanced soul. Someone who seeks personal truths before ego. Chapter 14, Preparation for Embarkation. So the decision of where, when, who is made, and then the other souls who will be of importance to you have to be arranged. This is decided in a place called the place of recognition. It's like a prep class. It provides spiritual reinforcement. Your soulmate could be your spouse or the other significant relationships of any sort. Depends on a lot of things, but the length of time that you've been together doesn't matter. It's about the impact you make on each other. Soulmates make impact. The sorts of relationships you have are mental, physical, with soulmates. You don't live without each other. You have to be together. They can be companionship and friendship, and they can have mutual respect. They don't have to, it's not necessarily who you're married to. Casual acquaintance who provides some purposeful ingredient to your life can be a soulmate. You can have more than one soulmate. Those souls in your life don't happen randomly. Soulmates are designated companions to help you and yourself accomplish mutual goals. We may have an identity recognition from higher consciousness. The lesson we have to learn is to accept people for who they are without expecting our happiness to be totally dependent upon anyone. Karmic lessons set difficult standards, and pain can be a purposeful test. It's important to remember challenges and problems are supposed to be a lesson and a test. Relationships are a most important part of our lives. Consider your first encounter with people important to you. What did you feel at that moment? These encounters are not happenstance. Case 28. A soul ready to incarnate, everything is decided, and it's always okay to back out. But they must go to the recognition class to observe companions, so they'll recognize them later. The class is about 15 people who will be important to the soul in life. They have similar energy, they're given triggers, signs to store in their mind, so they will head in the new direction at certain times in life. So a group of souls are being prepped to know when and where to contact each other, basically. So it's already in your subconscious and you don't know it. So the author says that he and his wife were attracted by something deeper, familiarity. And it was weird. He says this was the right course, that if he stayed with his high school girlfriend, it would have been okay, but not as deep or as much growth. There are many paths, that usually one best one, but we still learn from the alternatives. We can ignore or override signs to make the right choices, pick bad jobs, wrong cities, etc. So his example is his meeting with his wife. He watched an ad in a magazine. Well, he looked at an ad in a magazine as a kid that said, let me rephrase that. There was a watch ad in a magazine as a kid, and it said, "To Peggy," in white. And later, he received the same watch as a gift. In grad school, he was doing laundry, and he suddenly had this weird thought that it's time to meet the woman in white. So weirdly, he decided to go to a local big hospital. I mean, he's just like impulsively doing this. So he sees this woman in the watch ad in white, just a Peggy. And years later in graduate school, out of the blue, doing laundry, he thinks, I have to go to the hospital. And he goes in there at the desk and he asks for a nurse named Peggy. And he describes the woman in the ad. And the receptionist said, she'll be coming down here any minute. And she showed up and she looked just like the woman in the ad. That's just weird. I'm sorry. He introduced himself and he felt awkward at first, but they ended up talking for 4 hours, and she went home and told her friend, I just met the man I'm going to marry. Bizarre. So his advice is to not over-intellectualize, to go with your gut. Go with your Rolodex, your Rolex watch ad. So many souls meet with a council of elders before incarnating. They also meet after death, but they meet before they leave. This meeting is to reinforce their goals. They can return to say goodbye to companions or just to reincarnate. So chapter 15, Rebirth. This is a profound experience. It's the last chance to keep your memories. Case 29 is a woman who's excited to be going to the 20th century, so she's happy about it. She describes traveling a path quickly, all blurred, and going through a tube, and then she's in a baby. The tube is not the birth canal, it's the tunnel. The shock of birth is much the same as a near-death experience. It's greater than the shock of death. The soul can enter the baby at any point in pregnancy, and it can go in and out of the baby when in utero. It can also come and go after birth, and in its sleep it goes a lot. That babies sleep a lot, and the soul gets bored, and the soul comes and goes. The soul becomes the seat of perception for developing human ego. The soul may leave for long periods, and if somebody's brain damaged or in a coma, their soul may just take off for a while. Abortion is not even an issue in the spirit world. A soul knows it's going to happen before it's ever even conceived. And it may stick around for the benefit of the baby, but the soul's already chosen this short existence. It's part of the plan. Babies are aborted very early. They may not even have a soul attached to them yet. There's no need. Many souls go in and out of babies because babies are boring and they enjoy being out. Souls do. But they stay nearby just, because. The soul and the baby's mind get in sync. They get used to each other as partners. They integrate. They familiarize. Souls learn the baby's brainwave patterns. Souls help expand the intellect, and they bring comprehension and recognition. The soul stops leaving. Now, this blew my mind. The soul does not stop leaving the body on a regular basis until about 5 to 6 years old. Younger kids can be left to their own devices. Oh my God. Young children daydream and act out former lives in play. Babies know a whole lot more than they're given credit for. That's the truth. Order and purpose in the universe emanate from higher consciousness. It's no accident that understanding evolved from working with clients and hypnosis. The author, this is as much a learning opportunity for him. He was originally an atheist and a cynic. He says, I'm just the reporter. The people in the cases are the messengers. So we must mentally survive being cut from our real home, the spirit world. It's temporary, but it's isolating because of physical earth life. Concerns with life and death are just the ego, or the voice of our soul yelling at us that we have a personhood, that we don't really die. Is that what's going on? Are people so obsessed with birth and death, because life and death, because their souls are trying to remind them? Many people have trouble accepting a higher power with so much evil in the world. But we learn from wrongdoing. The not good is our test and our motivation to better the world. I think that's really important to remember right now. When we feel like we're overwhelmed by everything, current events, there's a purpose to it. Take our lesson from it and try to better the world, even if it's just in our own circle. So his work indicates that order and wisdom rises from spiritual energy levels, and it's possible that God, or the God is the oversoul of our universe, and it's still evolving. It's less than perfect, and complete infallibility is an even higher source. We live in an imperfect world by design. There are many worlds in the universe. Our trials are preordained as lessons that we embraced before we came. Karma is designed so that each trial will not be too great to endure. And then he says, at a Wat temple in the mountains of northern Thailand, a Buddhist teacher once reminded me of a simple truth. Quote, life, he said, is offered as a means of self-expression, only giving us what we seek when we listen to the heart. The highest forms of this expression are acts of kindness. Our soul may be traveling away from a permanent home, but we are not just tourists. We bear responsibility in the evolution of a higher consciousness for ourselves and others in life. Thus, our journey is a collective one. We are divine but imperfect beings who exist in two worlds, material and spiritual. It's our destiny to shuttle back and forth between these universes through space and time while we learn to master ourselves and acquire knowledge. We must trust in this process with patience and determination. Our essence is not fully knowable in most physical hosts, but self is never lost because we always remain connected to both worlds. One day we're going to finish this long journey, all of us, and reach an ultimate state of enlightenment where everything is possible. The end. So that was our book, The Journey of Souls, by Dr. Michael Newton. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me. And if you have questions, and I hope you do, put them in the comments, and I will probably do a card reading on Sunday about the questions. But if I get no questions and it's really, really hot and I'm tired, I may just bail on everybody. Play it by ear. I won't make promises I can't keep. So, thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back again soon. And in the meantime, slanga foil and slancha. And go listen to our podcast, Psychos and Psychics. Bye.